Joe Biden has a slim lead in the home state of Pennsylvania, where a position on fossil fuels has become a hot-button issue.
In last week's final debate, President Trump zeroed in on Biden's comments that he would transition away from the oil industry. That's left some workers in the state of Pennsylvania concerned about Biden's stance on fracking. Here to discuss how that conversation on fracking is landing in the state is Pennsylvania State Representative Elizabeth Fiedler. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So a lot of the fracking conversation has been happening sort of like at the national level as like theoretical exercise of how people imagine those in the state of Pennsylvania actually feel about it. Tell us what the reality is on the ground in the state.
Sure. So the reality on the ground in the state here is people are very concerned about, I would say, three things: healthcare, housing, and jobs. And that is true regardless of whether you're, in Western PA, you're here in Philadelphia, or you're in the Northeast. Those are the things on the top of people's minds. Those are the things that, impact their daily lives, and certainly that they're worried about next week, next month, next year. And I think that the Democrats have done a very good job of focusing on those things, of giving out their plans for them. Obviously, fracking is something that came up in the last debate, and that the president has tried to, really, I think, go quite far on. But the poll numbers make it clear that it is not true that a majority of Pennsylvanians want to continue business as usual. And that's true when it comes to fracking as well. People want to have clean water. They want to have clean air. They are tired of being members of frontline communities where pollution is layered on top of pollution. And I think that one thing that is resonating for a lot of people here in Pennsylvania is that we need to bring together the Democratic Party as much as possible. And that includes working people, and that certainly includes unions. Unions need to be, they're at the heart of our society, at the heart of making sure that our families have job security, fair wages, safe working conditions. And, I'm a strong supporter of unions. I know that Joe Biden is as well. And we need to be working with our union brothers and sisters to ensure that families have work now and that they see a path forward, so that, we're not leaving people behind as we move forward in Pennsylvania and across the U.S.
So just to stick there, though, a little bit, as you said, people care about jobs, and they care about healthcare, and they care about their livelihoods. For the people who work in the fracking industry, and particularly in southern Pennsylvania, this seems to be a top issue for them, right? So, some people may oppose fracking, but the people who support it literally have their livelihoods there and vote accordingly. So don't you think that the position matters a lot?
The position does matter a lot, and I think that Joe Biden has made clear that he is not going to end what is the current state of affairs tomorrow or next week. He wants to make sure that everyone who is working, regardless of what industry they're in, has, healthcare, has fair working conditions, and that includes absolutely people who work in the fracking industry. I think for so long, the super rich and big corporations have tried to divide us, have tried to say, you can either have healthy, safe, clean water in neighborhoods, or you can have jobs. And we know that that is not true, right? That is a false narrative that's designed for big corporations to continue to make big profits. And we need to make sure that jobs in renewable energy and all other fields, as much as possible, are organized by labor unions so that people can have, certainly that stability and healthcare that we're talking about.
Yeah. Last time around, we heard this, I think it may have been former Governor Rendell, who said this thing about basically, look, for every person out in rural Pennsylvania that we lose, we're going to gain 2 in the suburbs. And so Hillary Clinton is certainly going to win the state of Pennsylvania. That didn't work out. And in fact, you saw a lot of white working class voters in particular in more rural areas, and certainly in more industrial heavy parts of the state, flock to Donald Trump and end up handing him the win, even in places that had been traditional Democratic bastions, counties that had voted for President Obama, counties that had a strong union tradition. You had a lot of union members and places with strong union holds voting for Donald Trump. What was the nature of that appeal, and what lessons should Democrats learn from that?
I think that's a great question. One is to not take people and their votes, not to expect that a certain thing is going to happen, not to take it for granted, not to assume something. I would say that for me, as someone who's working very, very hard here in South Philly on very, very local organizing, We need to have a real connection with the people in our communities. We need to be making clear that we are working for them, that we are responsive to them. And I think that it really illustrates the importance of not just the top of the ticket, but the bottom of the ticket, in fact, which is, I know something that's not talked as much about on the national stage, but we're the people here in our communities who are talking to people. They trust us, they see us working, and they may never have the opportunity to meet Joe Biden or another presidential candidate. But when, a local elected official like myself can speak with them about the difference in the politics, the reason that, as a working person, this particular candidate makes sense, I think that's hugely powerful. I think last time there was an assumption that there would be higher turnout here in Philadelphia and in some other places. And we can't take anything for granted. I think that that's the lesson. And we have seen tremendous efforts here in Philly. I was at a bunch of the early voting centers over the weekend, launched a canvas with the AFL-CIO and a number of labor unions. People are going out this time. People are calling members, calling their neighbors. They're knocking on doors in some cases, doing lit drops, mail. We've certainly seen the presidential candidates pay quite a few visits to Pennsylvania and even to Philadelphia. President Barack Obama came here last week. And so I think one big lesson is take nothing for granted. And another message is top versus bottom. It is not, in fact, a choice of left versus right or Democrat versus Republican. It's really the 99% of us who are tired of having corporations make big profits off of our healthcare needs, off of our labor, who need to come together. And I think that message, in fact, is more clear this time.
What I'm hearing from you is a lot about driving out the urban vote in Philadelphia. I mean, is that a sign that a lot of the more rural vote has been written off? I mean, I was looking at the New York Times, and I'm looking at many of these other places where you can see record enthusiasm for the president, particularly in places with steel, fracking as well. I mean, is that the current strategy is to take upper middle class suburbanites and the working class in the urban region and turn that into the Democratic coalition?
Absolutely not. It's not a choice between one or the other. We are certainly pushing very hard in Philadelphia and in cities and urban locations across Pennsylvania and the country. But I think you can tell from the number of visits that Joe Biden and his surrogates have made to other parts of Pennsylvania. This is not an urban coalition. This is not just one thing. This is working people and the middle class and supporters of labor unions, supporters of public schools, supporters of compassionate healthcare coming together regardless of where they live. And so, no, it is absolutely not a choice of one over the other. And I in fact think that sort of narrative and strategy is very destructive. So that is absolutely not the plan going forward. And I think it's quite clear from the way that Joe Biden and his team have proceeded.
Representative Fiedler, good to have your perspective this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, is free speech becoming more partisan? We're going to discuss that with journalist Ed Jelani. Rising continues.